Hi, this is Joe Chambers. Welcome to Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage. Today's clip is from an interview we recently did with Ray Williams. Ray was born in London. He was brought up as a teenager during the swinging mid-60s, during that mod period of time when dresses were short, hair was long, and music was great. The Rolling Stones was one of the early bands that was just happening, and there was a TV show called Ready, Steady, Go. And this TV show had a band that he was very fond of. It was called Cliff Bennett and the Rebel Rousers. He went to see them perform on Ready, Steady, Go and was picked out of the crowd by a lady that was working at the show and said, "Why don't you work here as an intern?" And that morphed into him meeting all the writers and editors from all the very famous music newspapers that were running throughout London at the time. And it just opened so many doors for him. When Liberty Records opened up their London office, they asked him if he would run it. He did what he knew, which was press, and he put an ad in the paper, and it said, Liberty Records looking for new talent, songwriters, singers, so forth. He got a letter from a young guy who said that I'm not really a musician, but I'm more of a poet, and he had included some lyrics or poems that he had written. And he needed music put to him. And it just so happened that Ray had a friend who was a musician, a keyboard player. You probably figured it out by now, Bernie Taupin and Elton John. He also talks about how he unbelievably was able to sit in with sessions with the Cream when Cream was just getting started. And Eric Clapton, Ginger Baker, and Jack Bruce were creating those great pieces of work. And he got to see that happen live. It just blew me away. I mean, I couldn't believe that this guy was actually lived a dream for most people, especially us baby boomers. Hope you enjoy it. This is the beginning of Ray Williams' incredible career in the music industry. If you do, be sure to hit like, subscribe, and the notification bell so you don't miss any of our new content. Once again, Ray Williams. Welcome back to Musicians Hall of Fame Backstage with Ray Williams. Ray, thank you so much for hanging out and coming over here and doing this. We've been looking forward to it.
Well, I love coming here. It's a great place, great memories of lots of people that we all know, and brilliant. Thank you for inviting me.
It's our pleasure. So how did you get started? Were you a musician?
No, I'm useless.
No,
yeah.
So I've always been in management and production.
But really, it was a total accident how I got into everything. I was about 15 years old, and I was following a band called Cliff Bennett and the Rebel Rousers. Mm-hmm. And they were my local band. And one day, this new TV show called Ready, Steady, Go wanted to put them on the program. So they came down to see them at the local, it was called Burton's, I think, in Uxbridge in Middlesex in England. And the presenter of the show, Kathy McGowan, came down, see the band, and she decided they were going to come on the show. And I was there as a fan, and she turned around to me and she said, "You're their little fan, aren't you?" I said, "Yes, I'm their little fan." She said, "Would you like to come to the TV show?" So I came to the TV show, they did the show, and she quite liked me and asked me if I'd come back next week. Long story short, I became like an intern to her. And I would do photo shoots for Mod Clothing and for Mod's Monthly and for all sorts of magazines of the day. Mm-hmm. So I was like a young kid that they liked. And then one day she asked me if I would be a young interviewer. Would I interview people? Mm-hmm. And I said I couldn't string two words together, as you can see now. And she said, "I want to get you a proper job." So she introduced me to a chap called Brian Somerville, who'd been the Beatles publicity manager. Mm-hmm. And he started a new company, and he started off with a couple of acts, and then added a third. They were the Kinks, Tommy Rowe, and Sonny and Cher. And so I started to be I was his assistant. Mm-hmm. So the the first thing I ever did was to go with the Kinks to, where was it, in Streatham, to go and pick up the gold record with them for You Really Got Me.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. And then Tommy came over, and he had lots of hits in those days in England. And I was put on tour with him, with PJ Proby. Mm-hmm. And there's PJ Proby, Cilla Black, Tommy, blah, blah, blah. And then we got to Wigan. PJ Proby was kicked off for splitting his pants every night. And this young guy called Tom Jones came on with, and he had a hit in 1 week. It's not unusual. So we toured, and I got on very well with everybody. And Tommy and Bill Lowry, his manager, invited me to come and work for them in Atlanta. Mm-hmm. So I was sort of really in a short space of time. I'd done quite a lot. I was young, enthusiastic, knew nothing, but I was always around people that wrote great songs. Ray Davis, the Kinks, Tommy, and then I came to Atlanta, and Joe South.
Sure.
And, Billy Joe Royal was really a singer, but we all became great friends. Buddy Bowie, the Atlanta Rhythm Section, the Tams. And so Emery Gordy Jr. was around in those days.
Right, bass playing bass.
Yeah, he became Elvis's musical director, didn't he? Yeah.
And became Patty Loveless's husband.
Yeah. And so, and Mac Davis was around in those days, before he went out to LA. Mm-hmm. So it was a really great group of people. I had a wonderful time. And then they sent me back to England to work for them over there. And then time goes on, and there was a band called Cream. You know them.
Heard of them, yeah.
And I became their press agent.
No kidding. Yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah. And so that was amazing.
So tell me a little bit about that. Because Clapton and Ginger Baker and Bruce, what was that like?
Yeah, well, they were amazing. Actually, I'd met Eric before because he would be on Ready, Steady, Go.
Right.
And Ready, Steady, Go had everybody on
it.
Right. And he was always nice, and I was young, and he would always speak to me and, friendly. Mm-hmm. And so I remember that first album, going to all the recording sessions. And prior to that, to go back a little bit, I was also fortunate that when I was in America with Tommy Rowe, I came out to LA and I stayed with Sonny and Cher because I'd worked with them. Mm-hmm. And the managers of Sonny and Cher were Charlie Green and Brian Stone. And they had a new band called Buffalo Springfield.
Oh my gosh.
And I went to all their recording sessions. And as a young kid, I just had absorbed so much incredible stuff. I was living in dreamland.
You were living in my dream, I'll tell you that, for sure. Gee, Manetti. And, again, just Buffalo Springfield that time, with Stephen Stills and Neil. Gee, Manetti.
And Dewey Martin, the drummer, he was crazy. And we all became friends with a singer called P.F. Sloan.
Oh, yeah. He played
Destruction.
He played the guitar on California Dreamin'. He played the intro.
He also wrote Secret Agent Man, Johnny Rivers, You Baby, didn't he? With Steve Barry was his writing partner. Mm-hmm. Amazing. So I'd been around all these people, and it was like just normal. And I don't think we realized what an amazing time this was. I was just very...
Well, as a kid, I did. When I lived for the radio, and all these bands you're talking about that you were with, that was, to me, I've said this before, I've heard where, like, great athletes talk about being in the moment, and they're telling themselves when they're going up making a layup in a championship game, remember this, because this is
special.
This is special. And I kind of felt that way just listening, because the music just kept changing and getting better and better.
It kept all during the 60s. Coming, didn't it? It was just amazing.
Yeah.
Then you had this competitive edge between the Beatles and the Beach Boys,
Right.
and it was just fun.
Yeah. And everybody won.
It was great. And there were no real rules at that time, apart from the record companies were signing all these amazing bands. They weren't getting very good royalties in those days.
Yeah.
It was crazy.
But they're making a lot of money on the road, though.
They made a bit of money on the road,
Yeah.
and it became they probably deserved more, probably.
What was it like being in on a Cream session? Did it take forever to get a drum sound, or did they just kind of go in and just crank it up?
They were brilliant musicians, and they just.
I mean, would they knock a song out like?
Well, no, it took a little bit because Eric wasn't the singer that he became. You know, he was still not. He was not a lead singer for stuff. So there was a lot of, takes for that.
Mm-hmm.
But he became very efficient as a singer, didn't he? I mean, he was just wonderful.
But as far as laying the tracks down.
Laying the tracks down, I mean, they just went ahead. I mean, they're all great musicians. And I guess things like Ginger Baker's Toad, which is one of the all-time great drum solos,
Mm-hmm.
particularly put on an album. It was amazing.
Right.
It was unusual, wasn't it?
Yes.
To have a drum solo as one of the tracks.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's one of the greatest things that you ever saw Ginger do live. And when they got back together, the Albert Hall, wasn't it? This amazing drum solo that lasted, it seemed to go on for half an hour, didn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so when Eric did a lead, did he go back and, hey, let me do another take on it, or was?
Well, they would always work out. So if there was, quote, a middle eight type of thing or a riff,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they spent time on that. Yeah, they would go off and they would lay the tracks, and I always remember him sort of coming back, and when they were discussing, we need this, and he would go and think about it and come back, and I Feel Free. It was unusual.
Yeah.
It was not your typical pop song,
Right.
was it?
No.
And so it was all. Gosh, it was a long time ago, wasn't it?
Were you there when they did White Room?
No, I wasn't. But I remember I Feel Free.
Yeah.
I remember, at the time it was quite a haze because there was so much stuff going on. I'd pop in, listen, and then I wasn't going to hang around for a couple of hours because actually it was sort of boring. And my job was to go and get press and to report that,
right.
And to start getting the word out.
Yeah.
But I remember a few times being there when they were, working over the vocals for Eric. Because you think about I Feel Free. I mean, it's not a simple song, is it?
No.
And so they eventually got it. I mean, they got it, and it was working on those little riffs that he was so good at. But they were incredible then.
Yeah.
And Jack Bruce was just an amazing bass player.
Oh yeah, and a great singer too.
Oh yeah, he was really the singer at that time.
Yeah.
And he was a writer for a lot of that stuff with Pete Brown.
How did you learn your job as far as getting publicity? I mean, you can't just one day go, I'm a publicity agent.
I had been Brian Somerville's assistant,
Mm-hmm.
so I learned what was required for the music papers, and I learned that big stories for the national newspapers or national articles were important. And I suppose I just knew enough, and I knew a lot of the editors of the music papers, and that was a lot of it. I used to go drinking with them, mainly at a pub called Deham's, which was a famous old pub in the West End.
Mm-hmm.
Or you'd follow them to another pub.
Yeah.
I mean, because they all drank.
Yeah.
And so it was really following all the journalists in their spare time, the lunches, in the spare time, and just getting to know them. And I got to know all of them really well, of that genre, that era, sorry. And I was just good at communicating with them. And, we had at that time, we also had the Savile Theatre. So
Right.
one of my partners looked after, for Epstein, the Savile Theatre.
Mm-hmm.
Another partner looked after the Hollies,
Yeah.
Graham Nash and Alan and Tony. And we had a lot. We looked after Radio London, Radio England. When the American chap John Pearson came and opened it up in the UK. And so we knew a lot of people. Our office, which was also our flat, was a hub of activity.
Mm-hmm.
And all sorts of people passed through there. It was just a hub.
So you had a really tremendous opportunity in the fact that you were able to hang and meet people
Sure.
through your job,
Yes.
and you just it just became natural to you then. Because
Yes, it was. It was all very natural. And, I'd meet, I remember, I don't know if I should talk about it, but the first time I ever got stoned was with the Mamas and Papas.
Yeah,
They
I
were
think a
in-
lot of people got stoned with them.
They were in London, and I'd met them through Cher. They were shopping at Bieber's, this very fancy shop hippie shop
Yeah.
in Kensington. And I got to know them, and they were staying in London for a month. And they said, "Ring us up, ring us up." So they were staying in Montague Square in London, and I rang them up. They said, come on over. I came over, and that's where they educated me how to smoke a joint. And I'd never smoked before that. And it was just funny.
Did she educate you on a drop of acid as well?
No,
She, as in Mama Cass.
yeah, I did take it about 3 times in England. I decided that I saw a lot of people going off on a trip and never coming back.
Yeah, that scared me. That's why I never did it.
And so I did it 3 times, and that was the end of it.
Yeah.
So, they were just amazing times and meeting incredible people. And then one day, I get a call from a chap called Bob Reisdorf. And he had a record label in America called Dalton Records.
Mm-hmm.
And Dalton had been bought by Liberty Records,
Mm-hmm.
Al Bennett, Alvin from the Chipmunks.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
And he called me up. He said, I'd like to interview you to be head of A&R for Liberty Records. We're opening an office in the UK. I said, really? For me, an A&R man was George Martin,
Yeah. Right.
a musician, somebody who could arrange,
Mm-hmm.
somebody who was a producer of the video. I mean, that was a real A&R man. And he'd asked me to be an A&R man. I said, blindly, yes, I'll come in. He said, you were recommended by somebody from NEMS. Oh. He said, they saw you running around town and you knew everybody, and we thought that would be good. So I went in, got the job, and I'm sitting there thinking, well, I'm an A&R man now. I'm not really a producer. I can put people together. So I put an ad in the New Musical Express because I didn't have much budget. So I put a 1/4 page. Liberty requires new artists, writers, etc. Apply Ray Williams, 11 Albemarle Street, London, West 1. And,
Okay, well, hey, we're going to take a break.
Yeah.
When we come back, we'll talk about some of the people that answered that ad.
Hmm.
We'll be right back.